You're listening to Seek Travel Ride, a podcast sharing bike adventures from people from all over the world. And this episode is sponsored by Old Man Mountain, makers of the most durable bike racks out there. If you want to head out on an adventure, you need to strap gear onto your bike, and Old Man Mountain have you covered in a myriad of ways. Head to oldmanmountain.com to find out more. Now, on to today's episode. Hello everyone, Bella Malloy here, host of Seek Travel Ride. Welcome back to another midweek episode where I am fueling your stoke and fire for bike adventure travel. I'm always excited for these midweek episodes because during these I get to share stories from you, our super listeners, and hear all about your bike adventures. This week, we are going to be hearing from Alison Fullerton. She goes by the name of Loose Spokes on Instagram, and she and her husband have come to bike adventure travel in their retirement. She's got lots of super handy tips for us all to take away, regardless of age as well, including how you can combine bike travel with train travel. It's something I personally do quite a lot of, so I'm happy to hear someone else talking about this. The other thing is, Alison's going to be telling us about her time in France specifically. And, well, listeners, you know I could wax lyrical about riding in that country as someone who spends half of the year over that way as well. Anyway, let's listen to what Alison has to say.
Hi, my name is Alison Fullerton, and my husband's name is Jay. We are ages 62 and 66. We live in the United States. And we are retired, and we're spending 3 months a year each summer basically traveling by bike in Europe. We are planning our 3rd summer doing this. So the way that this started was we did have the good fortune of living in Germany for a few years. So we were taking a lot of bike trips. We figured out how to use trains and how to use the different planning apps that they have. There's a lot more in Europe than there are in the US for bike planning apps. So we figured all that out, but the one thing that we didn't figure out was how can we retire doing this and make it affordable and stay the full 90 days that our passports will allow. So we came back to the US and worked a few more years, and I kept on dreaming. And finally, one day I was on the Airbnb website and I put in 30 days and up popped a bunch of discounts. And that was like my epiphany was, okay, that's going to be my home base. Discounts with Airbnbs. So that's kind of how we start. Basically, what we do is we have an Airbnb home base and we take bike trips from there. We are not camping. I'm too old for camping. I just really want a warm shower and a good bed. But we do, every summer, our trips have gotten longer and a little more complex. So we're learning as we go, and just wanted to encourage more people to do this. It's really not that difficult. And if we can figure it out, anybody else can. So as I said before, we have a home base. We take trips from there. What we're doing, we love France, and both my husband and I speak a bit of French, so that helps a lot. The first year that we went, we chose 3 different locations in France, and we did a month-long Airbnb here, here, and here. We chose Avignon to do Provence, to be our base for Provence, and then we chose Tonon-les-Bains, which is on the French side of Lake Geneva, to be our home base for the Haute-Savoie area, and our 3rd location was Loire Valley. So we loved the French Alps and Haute-Savoie so much that we canceled Loire Valley, and now we go back to Tonon every summer. We love it, and we keep on finding new places to ride. It's also super close to Switzerland, which is just, really gorgeous, but super expensive. So again, this is one of the ways that we save money because we can get to Switzerland in a couple of hours by bike from where we are. Bike travel is common if you live in Europe. It's just kind of a way of life, and not just Europe, in other countries. In America, we just don't have the trains, and we don't have the routes, and we don't have travel in the United States is mostly on vehicles. We don't have the passenger trains, and we don't have public transportation. So it's not second nature for Americans. So most of our friends are doing these, group trips, which are great. I mean, they take care of everything for you. If you get tired, you can hop in the SAG. If you have a bike breakdown, they've got spare bikes. They've got bike mechanics. I get it that there's a lot of reasons why it's just easier to do a tour, but I know we can't afford to be doing that for 3 months. So I wanted to address what we perceive to be the hurdles for many Americans, because we would love to see more people, more Americans getting out there and doing this. First off, I just want to say all it takes is being willing to step into the unknown. We all know that. You will be able to figure out the trains and the apps, but you also, I promise you, you will have mishaps on the trains. We've gotten turned around, we've ended up on the wrong side of the tracks, we've missed our connections, all of that. But I wanted to just say that, and honestly, really the biggest things that we've had go wrong have been train related, and we're pretty experienced on the trains. But it's not just us. Sometimes we're actually helping French people with the trains. And trains are sort of a little microcosm of humanity. You've got all different types of people on the trains, and when they see you on bikes, it's very relatable because there's a very high percentage of Europeans, particularly French and Germans, who commute by bike at least some part of the year, a few times during the year. Everyone rides bikes a little bit. So they see you traveling by bike, and they want to help. So the biggest mishaps that we've had traveling by bike have been in the train stations, particularly when you always have to go either up or down when you change tracks. And that's tough when you've got a bike, especially a heavy bike with panniers loaded. They have these, explaining this for more Americans that are not familiar with traveling by bike, but you'll go up and down stairs to change tracks. And there's usually like a little flat track where you can wheel your bike instead of having to carry it up the stairs. So that's one option. And then there's also elevators. But honestly, there's a lot of people in wheelchairs, elderly, and moms with strollers that are in line with for the elevators. So we rarely do that. I'm pushing my bike up that track, and that's tough. So the way we do it is Jay always goes first, and then he runs down and helps me. I get started. But 9 times out of 10, by the time that he gets to me, someone else is already helping me. And they either ask or someone just grabs the seat of my bike and starts pulling it. And it's just amazing, the kindness of strangers. And as I said before, travel for us is just as much about meeting people and experiencing the culture as it is seeing places. So the kindness of strangers and meeting people through these experiences is for us what it's all about. And we had so many great experiences like this that last year we printed up these stickers. We go by loose spokes on Instagram, so we printed up loose spoke stickers so that we would have something we keep them in our pockets and we hand them out as a thank you when people come along and help us out. So hopefully we are helping others as much as they help us. So if we see a mom with a stroller and several kids and trying to get up the stairs, we just set our bikes aside, and Jay picks up one of the stroller and I pick up the other, and we're lifting strollers or helping the elderly. So, that's what it's all about. The last thing really that I want to talk about is overcoming the hurdles of solo bike packing or bike trekking. So I think the biggest hurdles for people are the feeling of being out there on your own and what if something happens. So when you're with a group, you've got the SAG. There's also just the whole issue of mechanicals. What do you do? So in Europe, you can let the train be your SAG. You can also always call an Uber. So I am not above that. I've definitely called Ubers a few times. Sometimes that was planned and sometimes it wasn't. So there's been situations where we just were doing a crossing that I felt was dangerous and kind of crazy, and Jay definitely wanted to do it, and I called an Uber. So as far as trains, we're looking at doing the Swiss Lakes route this summer. And there are some challenging climbs, and I will probably do those climbs in a train while Jay rides them. So we've kind of figured this out, but if you are not familiar with the routes in Europe, I just wanted to say there are some kind of classic routes that have parallel train service. And that's how we started. So one of those is Loire Valley. There's a parallel train that I think it's called the Loire à Vélo. And, you can always hop a train if you get tired, or if you have bad weather, or if you have a mechanical issue and need to get to a bike shop. So there's Loire, there's Lake Constance, which is a great ride. The lake borders 3 different countries. And then there's also the Via Rona. So in terms of just having mechanicals, that is going to happen. We have had bike mechanical issues 3 times since we started doing this 3 years ago. And it's tough. So my husband is a great bike mechanic. He actually went to bike mechanic school, but still we've had things that we couldn't deal with. And we've been fortunate that we've had bike mechanics we've had bike shops and bike mechanics that have taken pity on us and helped us out. But, you can't always depend upon that. So all I can say is while Jay was camped out at a bike shop last summer, I was on my bike running around looking for rentals, going to bike shops. And our last resort was Decathlon, which is a sporting goods store, which has a bike buyback program. So if you have to, you can buy a bike and then sell it back to the shop at the end of your tour. So there's always a workaround. And really just, I guess that wasn't really the last thing, but the last thing I just wanted to say is flexibility. One of the big advantages of bike touring the way that we do is flexibility. So when you're retired, you get to this point in life where you just don't want a schedule. I don't want to have to get up at 8 a.m. and have my luggage out and ready for a tour. And if I'm tired and want to sleep in, I can do that. If we roll into a town and say, gosh, this place is really cute, we want to stay here longer, we can do that. We can hang out the next day until noon. Hey, in Europe, you get sunlight until about 9 o'clock at night in most places in Europe in the summer. So sometimes we don't start until, honestly, there's been a few times we didn't start riding until 2 o'clock, and that was pretty great. So we've got total flexibility in doing this. But the other place where that really counts is when it comes to the weather. I don't want to ride in the rain. I don't want to ride in the cold. So when it's cold, we go south, and when it's hot, we go north. We just put our bikes on the train and go ride someplace else. It's just not that difficult. So the way that we plan, as I said before, we do hub and spoke. And before we get on the plane and fly overseas, we always kind of have an idea of what our bike trips are going to be that summer, about when, where we're going to go. But we don't book hotels and we don't book things ahead of time. As long as you are traveling off season, and by off season before the first week of July when schools get out, as long as you are avoiding peak season and avoiding holidays, it's not difficult to get hotels on the spur of the moment. We usually book just like a night or 2 at a time. So the only exception I will say for that is Switzerland. Switzerland is really expensive, so you do need to book ahead to get decent deals. And we love doing youth hostels in Switzerland. We've done them a little bit in France, but we really need them in Switzerland because it's a great way to save money. And the good youth hostels with private rooms with ensuite bath, those go really early. So that's another kind of affordability tip. So once again, you can be flexible and learn as you go, and just be willing to kind of embrace the unknown. But guess what? You've got a home base. And if you need to go back, you can. That happened to me last summer. The one time I got sick was in Switzerland. There was a terrible heat wave in late June, early July last year, and we were just getting started on our Switzerland trip, and we had to call it off because it was so hot. I had become dehydrated, had heat exhaustion, and that triggered vertigo. So it was not safe for me in doing that ride. So that's kind of a part of being older. We need backups. We have a little more health issues than most folks, but don't let that keep you from doing anything. There's always a workaround. I just also want to share, I was diagnosed with sleep apnea last year, and I keep my travel CPAP, I carry it in my panniers, and it's just not a big deal. So my doctor, I kind of thought I'd get away with not carrying it, and she was pretty adamant that I need to have it every night. So there's a lot of things that I deal with from a health standpoint, but it doesn't keep me from enjoying traveling by bike. And it's pretty fun. It's, as I said before, it's a great icebreaker. Our bikes are sort of our introduction and meeting people. People come over, especially when they hear us speaking English. They'll come over and talk to us about our bikes and our setup and where are you from. They all think, this is funny, they all think that we're from England because we're speaking English, even though we don't have an accent. And it's really, they're just so surprised to see Americans traveling by themselves on bikes and not in big groups. So we hope that will change, and we like to encourage people to get out there and try it. And you can check out our information that we try to share things that will be helpful on our Loose Spokes page. And we plan on doing this as long as we can, and we're enjoying every minute of our summers on bikes, and we look forward to it all year. So thanks so much, and appreciate this podcast. We learned so much from Seek Travel Ride with the website and the podcast. And that's how you do it, sharing, learning from each other. Thanks so much.
Listeners, if you're tuning into this pod, the chances are that you're using it as inspiration for your own bike adventures. Maybe like some of my guests, you're actually planning to go all the way around the world. Or perhaps you're just like me and you get stoked if you've got 4 days off in a row where you can go out there and get lost on your own adventure. The one thing we all have in common though is typically these adventures require us to strap gear on our bikes. That's where our sponsors Old Man Mountain come in. I've personally been using their equipment for over a year now. I've turned my dual suspension mountain bike into my perfect adventure bike, having their divide rack on the rear of my bike and their axle rack mounted on my front forks. They're super reliable and dependable and can carry more gear on my bike than perhaps I can pedal. I highly recommend you head to oldmanmountain.com, have a look at the solutions that they have for you, figure out what's going to work best for your adventure, and support the brands that support this podcast. Now, back to the episode. Thank you so much, Alison. I've got so many things that I love about this update. I mean, first and foremost, I love that both you and your husband have just fallen hard and deep with bike travel, that you are taking adventures, that you are not seeing age and being in retirement as a limitation, but rather as an enabler. I really love the fact that you just feel so passionate. I love the fact that you're so passionate about this topic that you want to share your experiences to prompt other people to think about it, whether they're fellow retirees or maybe they're a lot younger. It doesn't really matter. I think a lot of your tips can resonate with all of us. I love the idea that you have looked at it as a way of how can you make it more affordable, because so many people, especially from the US, maybe think that they need to be tied into a really expensive bike tour in order to see a country and to feel like they have that sort of SAG support, that dedicated support vehicle behind you to get you out of a sticky situation. And I think that happens with those sort of trips. And listeners, if that's for you, that's fine. That's 100% legitimate. But it is a limiter for a lot of people because it's so damn expensive. And Alison, I love that you're coming through with alternate ideas for that. The idea that train travel can be your get out of jail card, your SAG travel, your support vehicle, as you sort of put it. And how, you look at trains as ways to move you through an area that maybe you don't feel comfortable riding through, or maybe you just want to skip those bits, and they are 100% legitimate options. I certainly utilise the train system when I am in France so much, and for those very reasons as well. I think the other thing you topped on there is the idea of what it's actually like to navigate the train stations. Oh, gosh. Alison, I think I could be sat across from you at a table and we could just trade stories, right? And I think ultimately I've used trains so many times personally myself, and it's always worked, but it's always just a little bit stressful. And I think going into it with open eyes, listeners, if you've never done it before, is half of the battle. I think also, as you mentioned there, people do want to actually help you out. I love how you were talking about how the bike is your connector to people. Like, it's the conversation starter for you and your husband when you're on your trips. Like, people are curious. They're like wondering, what are you doing? Wow. And then you tell them your story and they're engrossed in. But also just complete strangers who are helping you to navigate the train platforms. It doesn't go without saying that sometimes navigating stairs and going up and down them to access platforms, it can take a lot of coordination, even with two of you, but I myself have also utilised the helpful assistance from a complete stranger to do so. And listeners, it 100% is something that does just happen for you. Even the conductors themselves sometimes can be that way inclined. I also loved your hot tip on the idea that if you wanted to come over for a really long period of time, sometimes long-term rentals can provide an avenue to doing it a lot cheaper than otherwise would be available. Often people on holidays, if they're looking at basing themselves and doing rides out from a hub and spoke type model like you are, if you're looking at a week or a 2-week rental, it is extortionately expensive. But sometimes if you have the luxury of time and you can dedicate a big chunk of time in one space, you can get huge discounts. Another hot tip I'll throw in there, just from previous podcast guests who've done this a lot, is the idea of house sitting. Often that entails looking after someone's pets or their garden while those people are away. But it is a legitimate way to get yourself some free accommodation in a set area for a period of time that otherwise might be unaffordable. So listeners, definitely hook into that idea. And Alison, I really love the idea that you guys are both also utilising youth hostels. That's brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. Something else you talked about there, Alison, is something I speak about so often on this show, listeners, and that is the idea that the best thing you can pack with you is flexibility and just changing your schedule. I think you mentioned there, Alison, like the idea of sometimes you come to an area and you want to spend more time in it. I know I've personally done that, or sometimes actually on the flip side, sometimes not everywhere we go to is hitting the high notes for us, and so we want to get out of Dodge quickly and just skip those parts. And flexibility in our schedule allows you to do that. Not being hemmed into having to be somewhere at a set time is definitely one of those things. The longer daylight hours you spoke about in the summertime in Europe is something that I, as an Australian, who I'm not used to the sun being up after 9 p.m. in the evenings, and it's definitely something that allows you to start the day later, maybe skip out on the wet weather if you don't need to be, locked into doing rainy rides. Why would you, right? And then lastly, something I've personally had experiences of is I've cycled through Thonon-les-Bains before, which is, again, as you said, on the French side of Lac Léman, or Lake Geneva as some people may know it, right near Switzerland. It was on my own bikepacking trip, and I spent a day in Switzerland. I was overnighting in Montreux, which is an awesome place, especially if you're a Queen's fan with the museum there in the casino. But I remember Switzerland's so expensive. And my husband and I, we didn't need a lot of convincing to sort of think, no, we're going to continue our ride to Geneva on the French side of the lake. And so I totally resonate with that side of things as well. Maybe I'll see you in Thonon-les-Bains this year. I think the Tour de France is coming very close by. But regardless, I'm so excited that both you and your husband have fallen in love with bike adventures, that you're spending your retirement taking bike adventures. And I think, listeners, if it's anything I've learnt from interviewing so many guests, is that age need not be a barrier to taking an adventure. So take a leaf out of Alison's book and start planning your own trips. Thank you so much, Alison, for sharing your story. Okay, listeners, now is my favourite part of the show. You know what I'm doing now? It's saying a big, warm, heartfelt thank you to you, my dead set legends of superfans, who've taken the time out to buy me a coffee. These virtual coffees go towards the running cost of Seek Travel Ride, and it really makes me smile so much when I read your messages. Firstly, though, I have to give a shout out to someone, that's right, another anonymous coffee buyer. Whoever you are, thanks for buying me coffees. Next, I have Colin Wellman. And Colin, you've said, "Hi, Bella. Congratulations for the anniversary of the podcast. I am in my 83rd year, and I get a lot of pleasure listening to your interviews, mainly at night when I have trouble sleeping. I still cycle, but only 40 miles a day. That is my limit. Listening to all those inspiring cyclists is the next best thing to actually having the adventures myself. Fingers crossed you can be continuing to running this podcast and finding more interesting people to interview. Many thanks, Colin." Colin, you're a dead set legend. Oh my goodness, in your 83rd year and sort of putting yourself down that you're only managing 40 miles a day. My goodness, Colin, I can't remember the last time I was regularly cranking out 40 miles a day. And I think it's so brilliant that you're doing so. I love that you're listening to the pod. I love that it's inspiring you to think about adventures as well. And yes, I can confirm the podcast is still going, and I have got many an interesting guest lined up to keep seeing us through this year in 2026. Thanks for being a legend and buying me some coffees. I really want to hear about your own rides. And next I have Milika. Milika, you're someone that's going to be featured in these midweek episodes to come. You said 3 years of Seek Travel Ride. Cheers to that with a big fat mug of coffee. Well, Milika, thanks so much, and I cannot wait to share your adventures as you take yourself from London all the way to Croatia. Listeners, you may have heard me mention Milika just recently, and it's because Milika has taken inspiration from the pod, specifically from Rebecca Gross's story. You'll know that we featured Rebecca. She's gone from Austria all the way to Australia. And Milika's looked at that and thought, hell yeah, I'm going to give that a go as well. And I think that's the best thing that I love about this podcast, that people have tuned in, and from tuning in, they've taken their own adventures. Now, I'm really lucky in that people let me know about that. But if you are someone who hasn't done that yet, please, please, please get in touch with me. Let me know what episode specifically maybe gave you that hit of inspiration to go on your own bike adventure, and let me know what that bike adventure was. I would love to hear all about it. And last but not least, if you are a super fan of this podcast and you want to show some appreciation for the episodes which I bring to you each and every week, simply head to buymeacoffee.com/Seek Travel Ride. Buy me some virtual coffees, but let me know, more importantly, what is it that you love about this podcast and where is your next bike adventure going to be taking you? And until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening. And that's the end of the episode, listeners. Don't forget, be sure to check out Old Man Mountain, who are supporting Seek Travel Ride this year. I am a massive fan of their gear, and I 100% recommend you check out the Hemlock bags and flip cages. A super handy and robust bag and cargo cage system. I love them, and I'm sure you will too. Head to oldmanmountain.com and support the brands that support this podcast.